Hi everybody, welcome to yet another exciting episode of Spotlight. Today in the studio we have Werner Bekker. Welcome to the studio, Werner.
It's awesome being here, thanks man.
Cool. Right, so Werner Bekker is a full-time performing musician with over 5 years of experience in songwriting, composition, performance and teaching music. Growing up with his creative parents, he traveled on tours most of his young life, and throughout his musical career, Werner has shared a stage with major South African acts such as Short Straw, Man as Machine, the Parlotones, Desmond and the Tutus, Rubber Duck, and many more. So, Werner, quite the introduction there. Walk us a bit through on how you started and how you sort of got your foot into the music industry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like you mentioned, my dad was a performing artist as well, so that's where I kind of started seeing what the music industry is about since I can remember. And so I witnessed a lot of what happens then. And then when I was about 17 years old, my dad had stopped making music as a profession, and we'd moved to London. So when we moved in there, my dad got this steady weekly gig at a local pub, which is this really cool Irish place. And we would join him, my sister and I would join him and just kind of go gig there. And I think that's a great place, or it was a great place for me to start, because it was really hard performing in front of a pub audience and they wouldn't necessarily like the kind of music I make. And so because I'm involved in a very niche genre, it's taught me that I shouldn't take life too seriously and shouldn't take what people think too seriously as well. I think that's something that as an artist you're inclined to think about what other people think. You want to impress people, you want to make them enjoy your music, but it's also equally important to find your own passion and to stay true to what you believe.
So Werner, tell us a bit more about how you got into the process of establishing your career as a performing artist, a composer, and a songwriter and all that.
So on my first gig that I did after school, I decided to go study music. My parents weren't too happy about it, but they were supportive because they knew how the industry was. And then I went to an open mic night on my first night and met a couple of musos there who are very involved in the industry, just luck I suppose, and did a couple more open mics as that year went on and met loads of people, and from there I started with Stuart Rees. We started a folk club in Johannesburg, which is apparently something that they have down in PE. And it did really well, and through that, because I was booking artists that I didn't even know and getting them to come perform at this small intimate venue, I started learning a lot about performance and seeing them perform, and I started learning how to connect with them and how to discuss things that I find interesting or that I want to know about the industry. And so I would say, like, it's all about networking, you know, and really finding people who relate to what you do.
So Werner, what is songwriting and performing and composition all about for you?
For me, that's a really difficult question, but like for me it's multifaceted. So like I love performing because I enjoy seeing what it does to people or how they can relate, and with regards to songwriting, I think it all started when I was in school and I listened to people that I admire, and I could really relate with what they were saying, and that's something that kind of drove me to write so that I can deal with things that happen in my life. So it's very honest. It's something like that just naturally comes. You can't help. You kind of have to write as a musician, I think, or as any creative. You have to express your emotions in some way or another, you know.
So walk us through how you usually start your songs and a normal day in the studio.
Cool. So when writing, I'm usually at my house. Some songs take forever to write. I recently saw a John Butler interview where he says, yeah, some songs just like come into your life and then they go away again, and some songs will stick with you for years and years and years and never get finished, but you've always got this idea. And so I've got a couple of songs like that I only finish after 3 years of writing them, and they just continuously come back. And then others, it's just like a sit down, play a tune on the guitar, and all of a sudden the song pops out, or you write some lyrics and it's easy to write them. And then with regards to studio, it's mostly set out and planned beforehand. So we go in, we rock up. We want to waste as little time as possible and just kind of like punt through everything. Try and get the emotion spot on. Try and get all of the lines spot on. The words. Make sure that the diction is perfect. That sort of stuff.
Alright, so I saw you guys on the rooftops on Balcony TV in Cape Town. So what was that all about?
So it's actually in Johannesburg. It was like, I think in my second year I was still performing with a band called Von Beck. We performed the same music that I perform now. I was a songwriter. And I saw this online. I saw Jeremy Loops on it and I thought this is a really cool platform. It's a way to showcase your music live in front of a global audience. And so I contacted them and they responded and came back, and then we did a session with them, with the band, and then later on I did a session on my own. And it's just really cool. It's basically just in CBD in Johannesburg. There's this big building. It's called Randlords.
Oh,
you just go all the way to the top. There's a massive bar there, and then they set up a little PA there and just take a video of you performing with this amazing backdrop.
I see you're also a teacher. You teach musical composition, songwriting, and all that. How do you usually approach, your teaching methods, and how do you usually work with the people? Is it important to be able to work with individuals and listen to their needs, as opposed to just teaching them flat out what music composition is and all that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the student, and every individual is a bit different, So my biggest thing with a first lesson is to see who this person is and what they're about and how they like to think about things. You get people who love thinking in a numerical fashion. You get people who love thinking in a visual fashion. And once you know that, it's easier to kind of approach the lesson from there on. Most people who like learning or who want to learn songwriting and composition tend to be more creative visual thinkers. So with them, it's often a thing of evoking emotion within the person and then having them sort of discover a technique, and then telling them, oh, well, that's this technique, So instead of telling them this is you're gonna write a song in the shape A B A B, you tell them, okay, cool. Why don't we do this? Why don't we repeat this line? And then eventually you get to the point where, okay, so you see, this is A B A B. So they kind of teach themselves in the end, and I would say that's my favorite kind of lesson to have,
Yeah, that's very deep. I also agree with you there. Is that you approach them psychologically as opposed to just every person the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. So how would you get a person from being normal to being extraordinary?
It all depends on personal growth. I think every person has like a different time span connected to their personal growth, and it can be long, it can be short. Some people have more talent than other people, and so they just get it. It's kind of like it's ingrained into them, where other people take a bit longer. That being said, I think anyone can get to that point. And I think the process leading up to that takes hard work from the student a lot of the time. Like, so I find often that with students that don't really put in extra time, I tell them this: if you go in to gym for 40 minutes a week, okay, and you want to become buff, you're a guy like me, you're skinny, and you go in for 40 minutes a week, is that going to make you buff? Maybe over 20 years, but you're going to take a lot of time to get there. If you do 40 minutes every day, then you get there a lot quicker. And that's kind of the idea that I want to instill within my students, is that you have to work really hard by yourself, not only when I'm there. You have to kind of have this passion for this, have this drive for it, and plan out when you're going to make time for that in your life.
So Werner, in your opinion, would you say it's sustainable to have a career in music and musical composition, performing and songwriting now in South Africa?
Definitely. And I think it becomes more sustainable with every year that passes. I think there's ups and downs. Obviously, there's dips. But I mean, when I started studying in my first year, in my second year, someone came to me for lessons and they asked me, can I play them a song? So I played her one of my songs. and she loved it and she wanted to buy it from me, and I was like, whoa, okay, cool, I'm not going to do that. This is my song, but I can write songs for you.
Okay.
And it ended up being an independent movie. In the end, I had to kind of compose for an independent movie, which was something that I never thought I would do. And I got to buy a car from that money, you know, and so sometimes it surprises you and sometimes you go through dips, but if you have your fingers in everything, then you can definitely make a career out of it. I mean, I do, as a day job, I do the teaching, which I've realized that I love. Initially I thought I was just going to be a solid performer, but the more I continue with this and the more I hear from other artists, especially people who are renowned, you know, all the people from Short Straw, for instance, have day jobs. You've got to do something else besides just performing to make it. But if you're keen on doing that, then you can do what you really love and still make money and still have a normal life, I suppose.
That's so cool. So what does it take to become successful as a composer, as a performer, as a songwriter?
I think a lot of luck. Like, I think luck is really a big thing. I know many musicians who are great who haven't gotten there. And I see myself as still getting there, you know, that there's still a lot to do. But the thing that I realized end of last year is that you have to run your music as a business. And that's I did the admin for a music school for a while. And I learned a lot about business there, which is surprising. I'm not a business savvy person. But then I realized that if I want to get somewhere with my music, I have to start looking at PR from a different perspective. I have to start looking at the venues I book from a different perspective, how many times I play a venue. So all of these little things that you have to plan out beforehand, and you have to treat it, even though it's a passion project and it's something that you love, you have to treat it like something that's run like a business. So for example, like a McDonald's, if people see McDonald's logo 30 times a day, that's why McDonald's is really great. That's what you've got to do with your brand as well.
Yeah, sure, definitely. That brings me to this, is that there's so much competition out there these days, and now with the internet and social media out, if you don't grind every single day, someone's going to pass you.
Definitely.
Right? So what would you say? What makes you stand out, and what would make people stand out more and get them to make products that are different than the rest of it?
Definitely. I don't know about myself. I think hard work is the big thing, grafting at it. And I always had this, and I read an article about this yesterday. I always have this fear that if I post every day, every hour or whatever, people are going to think, oh, not this again, you know, like, oh, I've seen this 100 times, can you please stop? But this article explains it so well. People generally, when they go through an Instagram or a Facebook feed, and those are my main platforms that I work with, when they go through that feed, most of the time they just scroll. So the more posts you have, the more likely they are to see you. And yes, maybe 1 out of 100 people will go, oh, this is so frustrating, it's all over my feed. But the rest of them will probably only see one of those posts. And so you've got to kind of, I don't know, swallow your pride a little bit and go all out, all the way out, and just kind of punt it. Be proud of what your product is.
That's so cool. So what projects are you currently working on, and what can we expect from you in the future?
The current big thing for me is I've released 2 singles this year with music videos, and so the next single's coming out in February-ish next year, and that's also going to have a music video. So we're going to have 3 singles with music videos, and then they're going to be part of a 5-track EP. So there will be 2 extra tracks that come out probably mid next year. And then people don't necessarily agree with me, because these days everything's about instant gratification. So you want singles, people want singles. They don't want albums anymore, but I really want to do an album sometime. That's something that I'm really keen on doing. And then maybe in the distant future, if I'm talking 5 years from now, maybe even doing some other projects. So doing something like I'm a big fan of like grunge and that sort of stuff, so maybe doing something like that as well, if I'm permitted and if things go well and I have the time to do it, you know.
So how can your fans and people get in touch with you?
Okay, so my handle on all social media is Werner Bekker Music. That's Werner with the W, and Bekker with a double K. That's something people often get wrong. And yeah, the handle's just at Werner Bekker Music. So Instagram and Facebook are my two favorites, and I've got some content on YouTube that you can also check out.
Right, so what advice would you give future people to get into the spotlight?
I would say work really hard, do as many gigs as you possibly can, and that's something that I learned from my influences. Is one of my influences, Ben Howard, said in an interview that he's gonna do, well, he did 5 gigs every week for 2 years before something started happening, and that's what I pushed myself to do. And sometimes I got it, and sometimes I only got 1. But if you can find 5 venues every week that will take you, do them. Even at the start, if they don't pay too well, it's okay. You'll get there. Meet new people, talk to people, get in contact with everyone in your industry, and make sure that you go to the right people. Don't just settle for anyone.
All right, thank you so much for coming through, Werner. It was so insightful.
It's a great pleasure.
Awesome. Right, so there you have it. If you're interested in learning more about Werner Bekker, please go check out the links in the description below. Also, Emily has got a brand new ebook out, so if you want to know more about how to start the ultimate career in multimedia in South Africa, please go check out the ebook. It'll also be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching.